Hi, I'm Jason Khalipa, and welcome to the AMRAP Mentality Podcast, a show where we interview interesting people about how they make the most out of every single minute. Today, our first guest is Matt Fraser, longtime friend and CrossFit Games champion. Most of you may know him for what he's done on the competition floor at the CrossFit Games. What you might not know is that both of his parents were Olympians, started competing in Olympic weightlifting at a very young age, or how he double majored and double minored in college. But most importantly, what we dive into today, and I can't wait for you to listen, is how he takes losses or times of turmoil and turns them into positive, or even now when he's at the top of the sport, how he reflects on his performances and wants to do even better. I got so much out of this episode, and I hope you do as well. Have a good one. All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the AMRAP Mentality Podcast. I have a very special guest, someone I've looked up to for a long time, someone who's been just dominant in the sport of CrossFit. It dominates in a lot of different areas, actually, based on our conversations that we've had. It's Matt Fraser. So, Matt, thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
we're going to get in a little 20-minute AMRAP of talking, or 30-minute, depending on how it goes. But a lot of people know you as a CrossFit Games champion, 3-time, also 2-time second place. I was fortunate enough to be on the podium with you one time, which was very cool. But they also don't know that you double majored.
Yep. In college, don't do anything in moderation. So yeah, I did double major, double minor from UVM in mechanical engineering and business.
I love that. So we're going to go ahead and I normally have my clock around, but I'm not going to have my clock. So I'll use this right here. We're going to go ahead and rock and roll with the 20 to 30 minute AMRAP with Matt Fraser. Might go a little long, might go a little short, but let's kick it off.
Yeah.
So Matt, you and I were talking earlier, and we've known each other for a while, and I've known you as a very, top of the sport. And I think we could all remember in this most recent CrossFit Games, I just want to start there, and then I want to get into a bunch of other stuff, but your performance on your final workout was probably the most dominating performance I've ever seen in CrossFit Games history. And that's a bold statement to say, but I think I could say it. Your ability to do those pegboard unbroken and then finish was so beautiful. And, can you tell me, because at that point, you obviously had the games wrapped up. There was no minimum work requirement.
Yeah.
And so, the chances of you, for example, with the minimum work requirement, it's a little bit different because just in case you get hurt or whatever. But can you tell us a little bit about that? Because, that was a game changer.
Yeah. So, like previous years, I had enough points going into the last event that I could score 0 and still have enough points to win. So this year they removed the minimum point requirement. And so it was kind of, well, there's no point holding anything back. If I get injured, whatever.
You still win.
Yeah. And so, it was one of those moments that come along pretty rarely of, I have nothing to lose. So let's just see what I can do. And so, when I was going out there, I didn't know how I'd feel of, am I going to do all singles on the pegboards? Am I going to do like two touch and go and then come down?
You just decided to do all 5.
And,
but you were the only person to do that.
No. Bridges did it, I think.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it was just one of those moments that I have nothing to lose and I wanted to capitalize on it. And, it feels good going out on a high note, obviously. So it was just did all 5 touch and go. It was round number 3. I was like, okay, I feel pretty good. And then came down from 4 and I was like, probably the smart move to do to come down. And then I was just, screw it, let's send it. And so they felt good. And, I ended the games on a high note. So it gives me a good memory of, the last thing that happened was something fun.
Of course. So you won in 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
Second in 14, 15.
Yeah.
Amazing performances, amazing career so far. And I want to get into how you got into CrossFit and all that kind of stuff. But before we even get there, out of all those performances, which one kind of stands out in your mind? I'll share with you for me. So I stood on the podium 3 times. And my probably most proudest accomplishment, or the ones that stands out to me the most, is probably either my second or either my third place where I was on the podium with you, probably the third place, because I had worked for so many years to get to that point that it meant more to me. When I won, I hadn't been putting in that much work for that long. So it was just a little bit different. So out of all the years you competed, which one kind of stands out as you didn't think you were going to win, you didn't think you were going to do that well, and you dominated, and it just stood out because of all the hard work you had put in?
So, the games that sticks out the most and had the most impact on my life was 2015. The year that I took second place. If I had won in 2015, like, who knows what would have happened, but I'm fairly certain my CrossFit career would have been short-lived, because it would have rewarded bad behavior, the whole season, when I trained very hard. I gave everything I had in the gym, but everything else I was cutting corners, like staying up super late, 2, 3 a.m., sleeping in till noon, not getting to the gym to start training until 4 p.m. It was just, my diet was god awful. I thought I could out-train a bad diet. And it was just bad. My training wasn't smart, anything, everything was wrong.
And you were having dominating performances that weekend. And then it was Ben Smith who took the championship.
Yeah. So Ben Smith won. He's been in the sport a long time. He knows what he's doing. He ran a great race. I just felt like, I'm looking back now, I'm happy that I lost, because if I had won, I would have continued that poor behavior outside the gym.
So tell me a little bit about that. So you're actually happy you lost. And so you basically fell forward, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Right?
So, at the time, it was detrimental.
Right.
It was, it took a long time it made me do a lot of life thinking, like, do I want to do this again? Why am I doing this? And I came to the conclusion that when I'm 40 years old, I don't want to look back and think, what if? What if I had a regular sleep schedule? What if I had a clean diet? What if I followed a good training program? So the following year, I was going to do everything in my power to not feel that way again, of leaving the floor in tears.
Right.
I remember I got back into the tunnel and I just broke down.
Right.
It was so disappointing. And it wasn't 100% because of the results. If I had done everything in my power and gotten second place,
so be it.
You hold your head up,
Right.
and that's what happened in 2014. Exact same results, but polar opposite feelings at the end of the day. And you feel
like this was your lead up, or like, because I always have I have the same mentality you do, but oftentimes I don't look at the lead up. So what you're saying is all these things were in your control about, getting up early, getting to the gym, being strict on this, which we'll talk about, which is currently the way you train.
Yeah.
It was the lead up, or was it the weekend that kind of you felt like you didn't execute on your plan?
It was the lead up.
It was the lead up.
Yeah.
So the week kind of went well for you, or to plan.
For the most part, at the games, I played with the cards I had.
Yep.
There were some events that went catastrophically wrong. But then it's like, well, why wouldn't they? I never practiced sprinting that entire year. I never practiced flipping a tire that entire year, so why would I be good on those come competition day?
So training up to it, you finish the games, you're in second. Most people would be like stoked, right?
Yeah,
They're hitting
absolutely.
the podium. They get the podium bonus, whatever it is, right? But you're sitting there and you're like, you were thinking to yourself, you never want to be in that situation again where you're wondering what if. And I feel the same way about business a lot, right? I never want to look back and be like, man, what if we hadn't taken that opportunity? What if we hadn't? And you're saying you had so much more runway, right? To play with.
And, so it was just such a heavy disappointment that I was willing to do anything and everything in my power to not face that disappointment again. And so, I did what I had to, and, made a lot of life changes, and then saw the rewards from doing that. And
almost like hard work pays off.
Yeah, it was. I did everything in my power, and then the results showed for it, and so basically that just took over. Everything in my life.
So what changed for you? Because you and I were talking earlier about this concept of hard work pays off, and how a lot of people think it stemmed from CrossFit or weightlifting, but it actually stemmed from earlier in your childhood, actually more like school. So what changed leading up to season 16, 17, 18? And then how does that relate to your mentality of hard work pays off? And where does that even come from? Like, where does your drive come from?
I don't really know where the drive, like there's no one specific thing, I think it's obviously from my parents. Had a great childhood growing up, amazing examples of parents, they were both athletes. They were pairs figure skaters, and they skated together and they went to the Olympics together. But then it's not like, I never saw them as figure skaters, I just saw them as my parents. And they led by example.
Did they train in front of you? Did you see him work out at a young age? What did you see him do at a young age that kind of set the tone for hard work? Because
I think a big thing was, so my mom's a doctor. She's a family physician, and she just set the example of good work ethic. So there was like, if she had work to do, it didn't matter that her work day was technically done. She stayed at the office until it was done. Every weekend, our dining room table was just all paperwork. She had like her laptop in front of her, and she was doing work that technically she's not getting paid for. Like, her work day is done, but she's giving up her weekend, not because she wants to, because she has to if she wants to get the results she wanted, she had to put in that work. And so my dad always told me stories of when they were younger and she went into medical school, and he goes, I would leave. So he coached figure skating when he was younger. And he said, I would leave the apartment at, 5, 6 a.m., whatever it was. And your mother would be at the end of the dining room table with her textbook and a cup of tea. He's like, I would come back 10, 12 hours later. She's sitting at the end of the dining room table with her cup of tea. And that's what she had to do to get the grades she wanted to set up the rest of her life the way she wanted.
You saw this as a kid.
No, so I never saw that.
Well, obviously it's just my dad. But you saw it as a kid. But then I saw her work ethic.
Yeah.
And so you and I were talking about this, and in college, you and I had a similar experience where we were didn't take high school very seriously. You had someone kind of sweep you along, right? Kind of like keep moving on.
Yeah, so my high school career, it was very underwhelming. I didn't work hard for anything. I didn't do homework assignments. Didn't take textbooks home. It was just like, if I didn't learn it in class, then
didn't care.
It wasn't happening.
Right.
I didn't study for tests, nothing. And then go to college and it's like, all right, now you're learning stuff that isn't as much common sense, or that you're not hearing in class. It's your responsibility to read the textbook after. And my grades reflected me not studying. And that was a huge hit. It was odd to me. And I was panicked of like, oh my God, I'm early on in my college career, and I'm not going to finish at this with these grades.
And this was at the training center.
Yeah. So so when I lived in Colorado, I maybe taken 1 or 2 classes a semester. Your college couldn't interrupt with training. There was no budging training times. So you could only take 1, 2 classes a semester.
So for those people that don't know, Matt Fraser is not only a very accomplished CrossFit athlete, he's also a very accomplished Olympic weightlifter at a very young age. He got into it, and he stayed consistent with it for a long time. Was invited to Olympic Training Center in Colorado, where he went for, how long were you there for?
I was in Colorado Springs for 2 years.
Colorado Springs for 2, and then you went to University of...
So I went to Northern Michigan University after that. Northern Michigan has the Olympic Education Center, which I kind of went backwards. Usually it's NMU is the feeder system for the OTC. Because it's an Olympic Education Center, so they require you to take a minimum 12 credits, so technically a full-time student. And they're more lenient on training times around your school schedule.
Yeah.
And then they'll pick, athletes that are really performing from there, take them to the OTC, where it's like, all right, school's on hold, you're training full-time, your entire day revolves around it. I went the opposite way, went to the OTC, trained full-time. And, I saw the writing on the wall for my Olympic career. It was after Chicago lost the bid for the Olympics. if your home country hosts the Olympics, you get to send a full team.
Yeah.
So eight men, 8 women for weightlifting. And I always figured, for that Olympics, I can get in the top 8 for the United States. As soon as it went to a different country, it was like, we get,
because you get like 1.
Now you maybe get 1.
Right.
And so it's like, okay.
And not only do you have to be the best lifter in your weight class, you have to be the best weightlifter based on
Overall.
Sinclair.
Overall,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So not to backtrack. So you're in high school, you got introduced to weightlifting. So your parents are hardworking. Obviously your mother's a physician.
Yeah.
Right. And your father, what does he do?
So my dad was Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom?
He was the stay-at-home father. He's the one, cooked, cleaned, drove the kids to practice.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one older brother.
One older brother. And so his responsibility was in the house, which is a big responsibility. But you got interested in Olympic weightlifting at an early age. So when did you start lifting? Because I know everybody's kind of seen these videos of you training in your garage, which I love, right? But when did you start Olympic weightlifting in your garage?
So I started weightlifting, I think I was 12 years old. Our high school wanted to start introducing weightlifting to the middle schoolers so that when they came to high school for football, they weren't learning from ground zero then.
Right.
And so I started going over, and a big push behind it was in middle school football. If you wanted to carry the ball, be a running back, you had to be under 135 pounds. And so I was very overweight as a kid. And so I set the goal of I want to run the ball. And so I started doing just sit-ups, push-ups, and running on a treadmill, and just started eating vegetables, basically. I just ate 0 fats. And so it definitely wasn't the greatest way.
Yeah.
But I lost, I want to say I lost 30 or 35 pounds.
And how old were you when you did this?
12.
12, because you wanted to go play ball. You wanted to play football?
I wanted to play football, and I never played before. I knew nothing about the sport. But I thought, no, I want to run the football. That's what I want to do. And so you had to make weight. And so I just decided, I was I'm tired of being the fat kid in class, and just did what I had to do to lose the weight. And then started going over to the high school weight room, and a buddy and I were literally just let's see how much weight we can put over our head.
Yep.
From the ground.
It's over your head.
Overhead.
Imagine that. Yeah.
And one of the football coaches just stopped us. He was like, "You guys are doing this so wrong." And my dad was there, and he went up to my dad and said, "Hey, your kid looks really interested in this. There is a guy that teaches that lift in the next town over. He's the middle school PE teacher. He runs a weightlifting club. Take your kid over there." And so my dad and I got in the truck, drove right over, met the guy, and he just said, "Yeah, I'm here."
And this when you were 12.
Yep.
And so, I think you're kind of really hitting on something that's super powerful to me. I think a lot of people see your success in CrossFit, and they don't realize that you've been putting yourself in competition settings. Very, for lack of a better term, very high stress situations in Olympic weightlifting, right? You get 3 clean and jerks, you get 3 snatches. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. And you can't go back down in weight. And so,
so you call your weight, there's a lot of strategy involved in it with depending on how many people are in your weight class, how many people are in your session, even calling the weights isn't totally dependent on what you think you can do. If there's 20 guys all calling for a 120 kilo snatch, well, if you go 119 and then your next lift is 121, you're going to have a 20-minute wait. And so you got to place.
You got to play the game a little bit.
You got to play the game to
But at
time
12
out
years
your
old,
attempts.
you start competing in Olympic weightlifting, and you build up these mental skills. I'm sure there's tons of them, whether you realize it or not. You're developing so many life skills that would then play into CrossFit, right? And everything else in the future.
And another thing with Olympic weightlifting is the room is dead silent.
Yep.
Every chair in the room is directed towards you. And so you walk out on the stage, and keep in mind, at 12 years old, and you have to wear a spandex suit.
Oh, boy.
So you're walking out in front of a crowd in a spandex suit, and everyone is staring at you. There's no music. There's no nothing else going.
You just got 3 people sitting there with little buzzers and whatever, and that's it.
they're all staring at you, and it's like, okay, like this is what's happening.
And so you go out there, you start Olympic lifting at 12 years old, you start competing. Did you see immediate success in Olympic weightlifting, or did it take time? I mean, how did that look?
Yes and no. Very early on, there's one competition a year, that's the school age nationals. So like when you're younger, it's like that year age difference
Makes a big difference.
Just huge difference in your body's capabilities. So school age nationals for people 17 and under is that's what you're shooting for. That's what you're training for, because they pair you up against someone that's your weight and your age. So very, very early on, I won the school age nationals, and, I definitely had some success in like those age category competitions, junior nationals. But then also like I would show up to senior nationals and get my ass kicked. But then you're going against these guys who are late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. It's a big difference. They've matured.
Yeah. And like most guys most Olympic weightlifters don't hit their lifting peak until late 20s, when your body's fully matured. You kind of get that old man strength.
Yeah.
And, so I definitely had some success. I definitely got my ass kicked a whole bunch, and yeah.
So you're in Olympic weightlifting. That's your sport at the time. You decided not to play football, or did you end up playing football too?
No, I played football. I think I took 1 year off in high school to focus on weightlifting, but I started playing football because like after school you go over to your friend's house and you knock on all the doors, and their parents like, oh no, Johnny's at football practice.
It brings that group environment. And speaking of that, so at a younger age, right? You basically when you were 17, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started experimenting with like some type of alcohol at an earlier age because of your surroundings and things of that nature. Now, once you turned 17. So what did that experience do for you? Because I'm curious, because you're weightlifting, you're playing football, you're kind of not you're not applying yourself fully in school, but you're getting distracted a little bit outside of school, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you just kind of came into yourself. Like as you got older and you started going to college, you kind of started to embody this hard work pays off mentality. So how did you go? How did that all kind of flow?
Yeah, at a younger age, kind of started experimenting with stuff you shouldn't. And, at 17, I had an offer from the OTC to go out there and train. So I knew it was this huge opportunity
which very few people get that opportunity.
Very few.
Yeah.
So I just saw the writing on the wall of like how much I had to lose. And then also, there's the factors of, there's been alcoholism in my family. And I saw that I was portraying those traits. And then a huge network of my friends that I had through high school they were all sober. And so when I hung out with them they were able to have a fun time without alcohol. Whenever I was with them, we had a great time. And so, at 17, I decided like, okay, I don't want to throw away these opportunities. I know with some more years of being active and just kind of not applying myself, I know where this has potential to go.
Yep.
And so I just didn't even want to find out where it would go.
Right.
I didn't want to see, can I drink like a normal person and just have one or two beers with dinner? So it's just, nope. So
Done.
yeah, so I got sober at 17. And I didn't realize it at the time, but in Burlington, Vermont, there's a huge network of young people in sobriety. So it was easy to make friends. Once I moved around a little bit, I realized how rare that was.
Yeah.
So it was, okay, like this is a good thing that's going on here. And then, so once I had a couple years being clean and, I saw some friends, die directly from drugs and alcohol. And there was one that, we met once we were sober, and, that's that was our basis of our relationship. And, you know, we were very, very close. And then I moved away and he relapsed, and very quickly he passed away. And, you know, that was the writing on the wall for me of like, okay, this isn't something that I'll get through my youth,
right,
you know, my stupid years, and then try it again.
Right.
You know, just trying to drink responsibly. It was just, no. I saw how quickly he went back out and how quickly it escalated, and I saw the end results, and that was it for me. Like, no, I'll never go back, you know?
And so this quote addictive personality, right? And some people could say maybe I have this in certain ways, like maybe we all do, because we just become addicted to something, but maybe it's fitness or maybe it's whatever. You channeled this negative potential addiction into positivity, right? And you've channeled it because you have a very dedicated mindset that maybe people don't realize. Like, I think they see you and you're so dominant, you're so good at what you do, but they don't see all the work and all the dedication, all the central focus that you give, singular focus, I should say.
Yeah. So, you know, I think a big thing to that was, you know, I'm newly sober. So, you know, I'm meeting a lot of new people. And I saw what they were able to do. And, you know, there was one example of a girl that, you know, I got to know her fairly well, and, like, heroin addict, full-fledged, life is in shambles. She got her life back together, redirected her energy, and now she's a practicing doctor. Like, she went through medical school, did very well, and it's like, oh my God, she went from that end of the spectrum to that, and it's like, oh my God. And then there another friend that I knew him a little bit when he was younger, and you know, just same thing. Life just got in shambles and went down a wrong road. Got his life back together, and now this man, anything he touches turns to gold. You know, very, very successful businessman. He and I stay in close contact, and it was kind of looking at that of they were able to go from one end of the spectrum to the other, and I saw how they did it, and it was they just applied anything and every ounce of energy to whatever discipline they wanted to succeed in, and then I know I'm the same way with it. Of I don't do anything in moderation. If I get a motorcycle, I want the biggest, the baddest. You know, when I went to school, it's like the normal thing to do is go and get your degree, and I went, no. If 1 degree is good, 2 degrees is great. Better. And so
you graduated with 2 degrees on the dean's list, correct?
Yeah. So I got a double major, double minor, and
you did a double major and a double minor.
Yeah.
In engineering and business.
Yeah.
And then what are the minors in?
One of the minors, I forget. One was in math, and the other one was in it was like another discipline of the business degree.
So you graduated, so you were at the OCT. Then you came into a University of
Northern Michigan University.
And you got woken up about, at that particular time of like central focus, dedication. You go for 2 degrees, 2 minors. And this is where this original theme of like, I want to touch base on this hard work pays off thing, because that's like your slogan, the hashtag WPT, PO. And so did that just something you just kind of rambled in your head at one point? You're like, you know what, man, hard work is going to pay off. I'm going to be in here reading books like you were telling me on Saturdays, right?
So, yeah. So, and I remember the specific moment where where I applied myself and it paid off. It was in an engineering class, thermodynamics, and it was known as being
I must have missed that one.
It was known as being like the weed out course. Yeah. This is course early on. The professor's told, get as many kids to quit as you can while they're young, and they can still their credits will still transfer to something else. So like first exam, I think my grade was like a 32 on the exam, and it's like that's detrimental. Like, oh my God.
Right.
And the class, your grade was 2 exams and your final. There's no homework grade. There's no participation, nothing. So I'm like, this is a third of my grade. Oh my God, I'm not going to pass.
Right.
And And so then it was just like, all right, either I ace the next couple and do well, or I'm basically out of engineering, and so it was like an everyday thing, going to the library, just getting a giant cup of coffee, sitting up on the floor where there's no
Almost
talking
like your
allowed.
mom.
Yeah. And I would literally sit. I remember the Saturdays getting there. I would get there first thing in the morning and just sit. And, once the stomach started growling too much, I would go down to one of the food trucks behind the library, grab lunch, and then head back up and just do it.
And this was at this point, were you still a freshman, or what year were you? Because it's kind of weird, right?
So UVM was the one I graduated from. It was the fourth school I attended. I bounced around. And, by the time you get to the fourth one, you've taken, say, 100 credit hours and like 20 of them transfer in.
Right.
So yeah, I would consider it my freshman year. It was the first time I'm taking school like very seriously and carrying, 18,
Like a
20,
full course load.
Yeah.
And so you're at school, you're dedicated there. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but so you get out of the Olympic weightlifting scene, you leave the OCD, you move on, and at this point you're sober, you're dedicated, you're driven, you're focused on school.
Yeah.
And then you get interested or engaged in CrossFit. And how did that whole thing, because I remember the first time I had heard of you was at the East Regionals, was it? Was it the East Regionals?
Yeah, I mean, that was the regionals I went to, yeah.
Yeah. The East Regionals in 2013 or 14?
So
14.
13 was my first year. 14 was my first year winning it.
Yeah. You put up you just dominated so well. And there was I don't know if it was like an overhead squat workout. There was something.
Oh, so that was that was 2013. So, I'm still, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right. So you're in school, you find CrossFit, you get into this competition.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the Open that year, I wasn't training CrossFit. The owner of Champlain Valley CrossFit, Jade Jenny, would literally tell me like, hey, show up here Friday, 4 p.m. We're doing this workout.
We're going to do these workouts. Yeah.
And so literally to the point of like, all right, the workout is thrusters and chest to bar. And I'm like, all right, well, what's a thruster? And he goes, you put it on your shoulders, squat down, push it up at the top. Chest to bar, it's just like a pull up, but you touch your bar, or touch your chest. So I am like raw new.
Right.
At the end of the Open, he's like, congrats, you qualified for regionals. And I'm like, all right, well, what the hell's regionals? And he's like, on this date, show up to this location and do these events. And so I remember that one workout. It was 7 minutes for an overhead squat. There's some format of how you had to increase weight. And then it was like a 1 minute break into 30 burpee muscle ups for time.
Yeah.
And so, I still have all my strength from weightlifting. And so I set the world record on that event with the overhead squat. I got 315 for a double. And then I like barely squeaked in under the time cap on the 30 burpee muscle ups. It was just like peaks and valleys in my performance.
Yep. And so what place did you end up taking that year at regionals?
So this was when they took the top 3 from each regional, and I finished in 5th place. And I want to say it was like 4th place was 1 point behind 3rd, and then I was 1 point behind 4th.
Wow, so you were basically very close to 3rd.
Yeah. And
so you got into this competition, you didn't really know what you were getting yourself into. And so the expectation, I'm sure, was low. But for you, what did you walk out of that kind of like realizing about your performance, realizing about, your future in the sport? I mean, I imagine at that point it was so fresh to you. Did you think you'd be sitting here, 6 years later, just killing the game? I mean, what did that?
No, so I remember always saying, school is my number one priority. CrossFit will always take the back burner to school, which it did for the most part. I took 1 semester part-time. And I remember having conversations with my dad of like, hey, what if you qualify for the CrossFit Games, and like, what if, like, say you win like 50 grand, what are you going to do about school? And I was like, oh no, like I'm finishing school. That's, it doesn't matter what gets thrown at me. I'm finishing school. And then it kind of grew to the point where it's like the money coming in had life-changing impact,
Yeah.
It's no longer money to go to a movie and dinner on a Saturday night. It's money that, hey, this could buy you a new car or a down payment for a house or just have a nice nest egg. And I was so close to the end of school that I was just like, nope, like I'm not going to let it throw me off from, that college degree is going to be there for when CrossFit's done. And so it was, okay, like, let's finish this school thing up and then apply myself.
That's super powerful for me because, you're a guy double majoring. You have this, you were already on the rise. Like you had already, did you take second when you were still in school, correct?
Yep. Yeah. And then I graduated, I think,
The year you won?
in December, before the Open started in 2016.
So, I mean, here you are, you made great money second, and, you were being successful, probably had sponsorship opportunities, but you still chose to finish out school, which I think is super, super cool because you had made that commitment and you followed through with it.
It was, and so I never tried to hold down like a part-time job through college because I thought it would take too much away from schooling. Like the pros didn't outweigh the cons, like pulling minimum wage, but then taking 10 hours away from studying.
Yep.
So I was like, nope, not worth it. I'd rather go without, just Saturday night, I'm staying in type thing. But then, these opportunities started coming up of these competitions around the country and, most of them were 10 grand, give or take. And I remember I did one streak. There was like 5 or 6 competitions in a row every weekend. And I lined them up and just said like, okay, like, I don't care how bad it's going to hurt. And I was in school. I was like, I would have to go to my professors
and tell them like, hey, I might not be here on Friday.
Hey, I'm not going to be here Friday. Can I do the work while I'm away? And so I would usually leave Thursday night after school. I would fly out, get to the competition, get in super late Thursday, compete Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It would usually be Sunday night. I would catch a red eye back.
Yep.
And then,
and you did that 5 weekends in a row.
And I would have someone pick me up from the airport Monday morning, like 5 a.m.
You go to school.
And I would tell them what textbooks I needed for class. They would go to the house, get them, pick me up at the airport, give me my backpack and drop me off on campus. And then I would be at school like first thing Monday morning.
And I think,
I remember I had one professor that saw just how wrecked I was,
Yeah.
I'm going off no sleep. I'm missing,
hands are all bloody.
I'm missing a lot of school. I'm doing my homework and studying while I'm at these competitions too. And they pulled me aside and they were seriously concerned, they're like, you're really sacrificing a lot. You make this hard on yourself. And what for? Like what are these competitions? And I said, they're CrossFit competitions and this and this. They're like, well, like how much are you making? Like, is this worth it? And I told them, I was like $10,000 a weekend. And they just kind of laughed like, dude, keep going. Like do your thing. Like we'll allow you to be absent, well, I'll let you make up a quiz when you get back. And so, I had some help getting through college with, stuff like that of, hey, I'm going to be out of town. And then I worked an internship at an aerospace company in Vermont. And my boss, I was like, hey, I need 2 weeks off to go out to California for the games. And he goes, yep, like go do your thing.
You get a lot of people support you along the way. When you've had, which I want to talk about, but before I talk about Sammy and then to kind of finish off this conversation, I want to talk about the money side. I think originally you got into CrossFit and you saw it as a way to generate some income, to take your friends out, do different things. And now it's stemmed into so much more. And you and I were talking about it a little bit, how originally you get into something and, you set goals, set markers, whether financial goals or how many members you get or whatever they are. Everybody's got these goals. But then once you hit it, a lot of people just want to keep hitting the next goal.
Yeah.
Right? And
and like I never hid the reason when I first started. Like I started competing in CrossFit for the money.
Yeah.
My first couple
trying
competitions.
To pay your bills, trying to go out to the movies. I get it.
Like the first competition I did was $500, and I remember having 500. And I went, oh my god, I don't think I've ever had $500. And then the next one was like $2,000 and the next one was $4,000. And, you know, I'm like, I'm a college student, don't want to get a job. And, you know, it was a great opportunity. Like now I can go out to the movies or I can go out to dinner. Like when I have a whole group of friends that, hey, we're going to such and such restaurant. I used to have to say like, oh, I'll meet you after when you guys go back home. So, okay, now I can go out and, you know, $40-$50 for dinner. That's not outrageous. And now I have that pocket money. And, you know, it was a goal. So, you know, once I started making a little money, it's like, okay, I want to make $10,000.
Right.
You know, it might take a year, it might take 2 years, whatever, but it's just setting a goal to have something to work towards.
Yeah.
And, set one number and
you get it.
Before I know it, it comes and goes.
Right.
So it's like, all right, now, and then it was a big thing too, was like, I always planned on working as an engineer. I always planned on using that degree and doing that. And so I figured if I can grab some money now while I'm still in college, once I start a job, once I start that 9 to 5, I'm going to be at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
But I'll have a nest egg already set up.
Right.
So I won't have to, you know, live in that shitty 1-bedroom apartment. You know, I'll have a down payment for a house, or like I won't have to worry about driving a beater car and it's not starting on Monday morning. You know, I can have that nice car that will get me to work. And so, you know, that was the intent the whole time, was to start my working life with a nest egg.
Right.
And, you know, it obviously picked up, you know, it became a full-time gig.
Of course.
And so then I was always setting these numbers just to have a goal, something to work towards. And then, you know, goal 1 come and go, goal 2 would come and go, goal 3. And then finally, like, and those numbers also, you know, a couple of them were like, okay, if I hit that goal, I'll be content.
Comfortable.
I'll be comfortable. I'll be content. And then I would always hit the goal ahead of time, like sooner than I thought. And quickly I realized, like, I had this conversation with Henshaw of like, okay, money no longer has anything to do with it. You know, it's the process, you know, it's getting that reward of, I put in all that work and this is the moment that it shows that I put in all that work, you know?
And that's where you're at today, which is a beautiful place to be. You know, you've been able to put yourself in a position where you can provide for your family in the future. You can do these different things, but for you, it's about the process. You're a competitor. You want to win. You want to be focused.
The thing I've grown to love, and it started with school. So it started with thermodynamics of, you know, I would be listening to the teacher's lecture and he starts talking about like entropy. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
And so if something came up in the homework, it's like, okay, figuring out, learning what I don't know. What do I not know? Why is this not making sense? And then figuring out, okay, I don't know what entropy is.
Right.
Why don't I know what entropy is? Did I miss that chapter? Did I miss that lecture? And then just working backwards. And that was the same thing with the games. So like, perfect example is 2013 regionals. Okay, I came 5th place. Why did I not finish higher? And you go through the events, and the one common denominator was cardio, conditioning. And it's okay. Why is my conditioning bad? Well, I don't do it in training.
You're taking a very analytical approach.
And so it's just figuring out what results do I want, and then breaking it down to how do I get there. So, you know, the end goal is, all right, I did terribly in 2013 regionals. I want to do well at 2014 regionals. So that's the end goal. And then breaking it down to, okay, why did I not do well? Was it a movement? Was it a stimulus? Was it a time domain? Like figuring out what was wrong, and then, okay, what do I have to do to make that better?
Yep.
And
this is what you learned, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 2015 CrossFit Games, when you took second, is you made the changes for 16, 17, 18 that put you, so you did this analysis, right? You're very analytical. You could just tell by the way you talk. You're obviously a very intelligent person. So you're looking at results, and then you started making these changes. So, you know, to go back to our initial conversation, what changes did you make from that, you know, that time when you're in the tunnel, you're breaking down? What changes occurred And how do those still relate today? Because here we are, you're financially in a position where you're good, but you're inspired by the process. You're inspired by getting better. And so what do you do from 16, 17, 18 to keep that process going?
So, like there's been things through those last 3 years that I've done that I liked. And I still feel like I'm getting benefit from them. So still doing those things. But then, like it was a couple days after the games, I'm going through, I print off all the events, what they were, where I finished, and how I felt about that finish.
You did this after the CrossFit Games?
Yeah, so like this year. This is the process I did.
You did this
year. Yeah.
After you won by over 200 points, I think.
Yeah, because, like there were still things that I was very, very disappointed in myself in.
I think you finished outside the top 10 one time.
Yeah, I don't recall where.
I think it was one time.
But so there were events that, I go through and so I write out the name of the workout, what the workout was, where I finished, and how I felt about that finish. And then, okay, why did I feel that way? So there were workouts that I felt amazing about, that I also did well in. So like the final event with the pegboards.
Yes.
I worked on my pegboards so much this year from the 2017-2018 season. And so when that workout came out, I did a 5 unbroken and it was like, fuck yes. That was, I worked for that moment, that opportunity was presented to me and I executed.
Right.
And then there were workouts that, like I didn't finish first, but I was like through the roof excited with how I did because it was still better than it was before. It was something I worked on and I saw the improvement.
And so you jotted these down this year. You took those down and you're making mental notes while it's still fresh in your head, right? And then you're just going to use that as a learning or like a platform.
So I break it all down into, why was I not happy? Was it the time domain? Was it the stimulus? Was it my mental state going into it? Was it a certain muscle group that I didn't feel was developed enough to be where I wanted to be? And then I go through all those, every event and find out, all right, what is the most common denominator here,
Right.
So once I find that, that's going to be my number one focus for the next year. But then also keeping in mind all those other things of, something as simple as, someone said something and I didn't like it. And I brought that onto the floor the next year or for the next event. And so it's like, okay, I need to work on acceptance of I can't control what you think. I can only control how I perceive it or how I handle it.
Yeah.
So, it's something even that simple that can
which plays a big role. I mean, as you and I know, and I think you would agree, at the top 10 level, everybody's, you've became an outlier, but for the most part, people are pretty tight. But it's the mental side, it's the execution, it's a lot
absolutely.
of that.
And I've noticed it a lot more in the last couple of years of just like when I'm watching, the movie that comes out from the games or just like behind the scenes stuff. And I'm like, I'm not happy with how I look on camera, how I come off, because it's not who I am day to day. It's not who I am usually. Because I just focus everything. I don't try to make jokes. I don't put out that extra effort
to talk to anybody.
To anyone, nothing. It's like, no, I'm here for one thing. I'm here to compete and do as well as I can at that. So that's getting every ounce of my energy. And so, it is what it is,
Dude, I mean, honestly, man, I got to tell you, just through this conversation, I hope as many people get out of it, what I've gotten out of it is that you've dedicated yourself. You have a phenomenal ability to self-assess. And I think that has to come from starting off Olympic weightlifting at 12 years old to be in front of a bunch of people in a Speedo and having to self-evaluate your performance. I mean, I like to think about when Ava got sick and we've gone through some stuff, all the competition, all these times where our back was up against the wall, where you had to overcome adversity, it helped us when this life situation happened.
Oh,
And
absolutely. And like a big thing too is like none of these life realizations or life changes came from success. Like I made a big change in my schooling when I failed a bunch of exams. I made life-changing training differences after I lost at the games. So it's like, and then even stuff as simple as breaking up with a girlfriend. Like when you're young, that's a big deal. You don't have much else going on in your life, so it just consumes you. And then kind of looking at like, well, why? What did I do wrong? And self-assessing of, okay, how can I be a better person for the next relationship? And stuff like that. And
I think you have a remarkable gift for self-evaluation. I think, so to wrap this up, you're engaged now. Sammy has Feeding the Frasers as an Instagram account. I love it. She is a phenomenal cook, it seems. And you guys seem to be a very happy couple. You're a lucky man. What are the plans for the next, let's just call it 24 months? What's Matt Fraser doing over the next 24 months?
The main goal is to keep executing on the opportunities I have. I have a great opportunity to perform well in CrossFit. And there's a timestamp on what your body's capable of, age is inevitable. So doing everything I can to get everything I can out of this experience while I can. I've started doing some, it came up after the games. I bought some land in Vermont, and that's where we'll build our forever home. I'll keep my Tennessee residency. We have a house there. So keep doing that. The number one priority is competing, doing well at that. But, there's been a lot of life planning that's come up of, buying this piece of property. And so the month after the games, I allowed myself to just completely dive into that and start prepping the land for builders and that type of thing. But, I've started training again for this season. And so I'm hands off of that now. Come January, the builder, I'll basically have no contact with. It's just, all right, come August, we'll pick back up where we left off, and I'll dive back into it then. But
from all the years we've known each other and from everything we've ever talked about, your dedication to the craft, your dedication to winning, to dominating, to pursuing that journey, right? And for yourself, for your family, for the future is really remarkable. In your self-evaluation. I really appreciate you taking the time. We are at the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run. We are going to run a 10K tomorrow in the mud. And again, I just want to thank you for sharing your insight, because I think, people see your success and you're so dominant, you're so great, you're so good at what you're doing, but they don't see all the years of hard work, dedication, sacrifice, and ups and downs that got you to where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. People don't usually put their failures on display to show everyone. But I feel more common than not, every successful person, it's like when you ask them, like, what's the one life altering moment? 9 times out of 10, it's a failure. It's something that they screwed up so catastrophically, but they learned such a valuable lesson from it, that it helped develop them into who they are today, of just doing well at their craft. But
which you're doing. So where can people find you? I know, where can people find you? Like on social media?
Oh, on social media. I was like, dude, like,
well,
I'm not telling
your home
people
address.
where I live.
Not your home address. No.
I think, so Facebook, just Matthew Fraser, and then Instagram, Matthew Fraz. I try to stay active on both of them, but I'm not so good at the technology stuff, so I do what I can.
Okay, and then you're the Feeding the Frasers.
Yeah, Instagram, Feeding the Frasers. It's basically what Sammy cooks for me every day, dude, in an absolutely adorable format. It's remarkable. Make sure you guys check it out, and thank you again, bro. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. All right, man.